DISOVERED, the incredible tattoo that transformed Delta Force's view of veteran sacrifice. There was once a time when the name Mike Jennings commanded respect, when his mere presence in a room ignited something within others. Now, as he sat in the booth of the diner in his small Texas town, he felt like a shadow flickering against the walls, just as the jukebox played an old country tune. Every face he glanced at told a story he longed to be part of, yet he remained a ghost in their midst. The tattoo on his forearm a haunting representation of his brothers in arms, their faces frozen in a moment of desperation, was both a comfort and a weight, anchoring him to memories that wouldn't let him breathe. He swiped a hand across his brow, remembering their sacrifices, his heart clenching at each recollection. The creaking of the diner's door made him flinch, a man in a suit taking his place among the regulars, oblivious to the world of honor and anguish that Mike carried. A flicker of jealousy spiked within him. How easy it must be to wear a polished exterior, to float through life unencumbered. As he adjusted his worn-out cap, he felt the heavy stares of local townsfolk boring into him as they reveled in their discussions of job openings and school sports. What did they know of sacrifice? What weight could they possibly understand? Coffee? The waitress's chipper voice pulled him back. He nodded, staring at the faded newspaper clippings pinned to the wall, stories of local heroes, their triumphs captured in ink while his comrades' names faded into the abyss of memory. Would anyone ever remember theirs? Before he could lose himself in despair, his old mentor, Colonel Daniels, slid into the booth across from him. The Colonel's presence initially sparked hope, but Mike's walls felt thicker now, encapsulating years of pain. "You've been away too long, son," Daniels said, his eyes penetrating through Mike's bravado, peeling back layers of fear Mike thought well guarded. "They're doing a community art project to honor veterans." Art? Mike's heart raced at the thought, but dread quickly followed. What right did he have to share his story? What if he revealed too much about his tattoo, about the men it depicted, only to be met with indifference? Each breath came irregular, reminding him of the late-night hauntings filled with incomprehensible what-ifs. Art was meant to heal, to uncover truths, yet didn't he hold a weapon against the gallery of his own memories? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The Colonel leaned forward. "Creating can be your outlet, Mike. Do it for your brothers." But as the Colonel's voice softened, an outsider swaggered through the door, a slick businessman whose polished shoes scraped against Mike's reawakened hope. The pitch was a cold breeze, commercializing the art project, robbing it of essence and spirit. How could they exploit something so sacred for profit? Doubt gnawed at him, the burden of unaddressed emotions surfacing like a dam about to break. Could he fight against perceptions that saw his tattoo as mere ink? Was he prepared to confront not only the entrepreneur but also the reluctance of his own heart, wrestling with memories, those agonizing smiles of men who would never return? As the meeting approached, Mike felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The tattoo tingled, a living testament to his past. The stakes were high. He was on the edge of something monumental. The very next day he would stand before the council, ready to carve out a piece of history that would echo not just his struggle, but that of all veterans. Yet, uncertainty flooded him, a tidal wave of internal conflict that begged to swallow him whole. Would they listen? Or would he become yet another forgotten chapter, lost in the chaos that defined the world outside? Fingers trembling, Mike ran a hand over the tattoo again, tracing the etched faces of his fallen comrades. Each contour was a silent scream for recognition. He inhaled deeply, feeling the warmth of the booth wash over him, even as his heart chilled with apprehension. Perhaps this wasn't merely about sharing his own story, but rather a call to honor their legacy, a legacy that he feared would be degraded by commercialization. As day broke, he paced his small kitchen, the sunlight pouring in through the window like a reminder of possibilities. Coffee brewed aromatic and strong, but it was the bitterness of indecision that lingered in his mouth. What if he failed them? What if the council members didn't see the meaning in his art, reduced it to mere entertainment? Anxiety twisted his insides. With newfound determination, Mike stumbled upon an idea, an angle. He wouldn't just talk about his experience, he would reveal the emotional weight carried by every veteran, each mark on his skin telling a story that reached beyond the grave. He poured his heart into sketching out his thoughts, a last-ditch effort to encapsulate not just the pain, but also resilience in a format they might understand. In the mirror, he studied his reflection, searching for the man who once inspired respect. The eyes that stared back were clouded, but beneath the layers rested a flicker of the warrior he used to be. Would he let doubt overshadow the silent cries of his brothers? No. It was time to rise, to confront not only the council, but the demons festering within. As he stepped into the community hall that afternoon, the walls were adorned with art, some pieces vibrant with color, others stark and raw. Unsure of the path ahead, he felt the tattoo throb against his skin, reminding him of the life coursing through him, a life unyielded to time. Each step felt heavier, yet there was a flicker akin to adrenaline that illuminated his spirit. The stakes weren't solely about him, they resonated through a collective heartbeat of soldiers who had laid down everything in service. Seated among individuals who appeared oblivious to the gravity he carried, Mike thought back to the colonel's words, anchoring himself to hope. He had prepared for confrontation with those who sought to commodify his art, but he hadn't considered the possibility of connection. Upon his name being called, he stood before the council, his heart drumming against his ribs as he prepared to speak. One tattoo holds a burden of unspeakable loss, he began, his voice steady despite the turbulent emotions churning within. He shared stories of joy, laughter, and the darkness that followed each loss. He spoke of brotherhood and sacrifice, his words weaving through the air like trails of smoke. The flicker of recognition sparked in some eyes, but skepticism hung thick from others. Yet, there were moments when Mike recognized the shift, the doubt in his soul begun to dissipate under the weight of raw honesty. More than once, he caught the gaze of a council member who seemed to lean forward, engaged and intrigued. Easing into his narrative, he realized he wasn't just fighting for acknowledgement, but actively reclaiming his agency, removing the weight of indifference that threatened to drown him. The meeting stretched on, but the end was near. Just as he approached his closure, the slick businessman from the diner raised his hand. The expression on his face was condescending curiosity, the kind that had previously threatened to pull Mike into that despair. He opened his mouth to speak, the confidence rallying within Mike to hold his ground. "Your tattoo tells a story to be exploited, Mr. Jennings?" the businessman asked, smirking. With resolve, Mike clenched his fists. "This tattoo is a story of those who paid the ultimate price. You want to exploit this, but today, I'm taking it back." And in that moment, as he felt the eyes of those around him bore into his soul, he understood he stood not alone but alongside shadows of the past, pushing toward a horizon defined by awareness and remembrance. Yet, what would that mean for him now, or worse, for the ones he fought to honor? Would standing his ground strengthen his voice, or would it only deepen the persistence of the indifferent? As the meeting concluded, Mike left the hall, the atmosphere buzzing with murmurs, but one thought lingered: had he truly carved his path, or was the battle just beginning? As Mike stepped outside the hall, the sunlight felt blinding, wrapping him in a cocoon of warmth that contrasted sharply with the cold interrogation of the council. Doubt loomed larger than ever, a specter at his shoulder whispering fears, while a rush of adrenaline surged through his veins. He confronted the most daunting part of his mission, the council's doubts, but what lay ahead seemed equally daunting. Without a clear direction, uncertainty gnawed at him. He wandered through the nearby park, seeking clarity among the familiar sounds of life around him. Children played under the watchful eyes of their parents, laughter floating softly through the air. The contrast struck Mike. Here they were, crafting memories while he was entangled in the shadows of grief and remembrance. The edges of his tattoo brushed against his shirt sleeve, a constant reminder of his past, what had been taken and what he still fought for. sitting on a weathered bench, he pulled out his sketchpad from his bag. The rough paper, once a blank canvas, now filled with frantic notes and sketches reflecting the raw emotion he had poured into his speech. It was a reflection of his journey, a testament to pain and resilience. In that moment, he realized this wasn't just an endeavor to reclaim his agency, it was about articulating a narrative that had often been silenced. Mike flipped through the pages, pausing on one particular drawing, an abstract representation of interconnected faces, each one carrying a unique story of loss. It represented the collective experience of veterans, something that had been overlooked in the flash of entertainment-driven narratives. The simplicity of the design contrasted sharply with the complexity it embodied. He sensed a new direction, a way to draw people in not through mere shock value, but by forging a connection that could bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Inspired, he set to work. This wasn't going to be just a pitch anymore, it would be an exhibition of emotion, a visual tale told through raw artistry that demanded attention. He needed to convey a truth that transcended commercial interests, something that forced viewers to confront their discomfort. He envisioned a series of pieces, telling stories that echoed the silence of those who had fallen, those who couldn't share theirs. Yet, as he envisioned this path, something deeper scratched at his insides. Could he expose this raw vulnerability effectively, or would it leave him feeling more exposed than ever? Each stroke of his pencil felt like a step closer toward healing, yet also a step toward a perilous edge he was afraid to confront. After hours lost in vision, Mike stood only to find the sun dipping low on the horizon. The world around him began to dull, mirroring the exhaustion gathering at his shoulders. His personal conflict, a desire to share and the fear of rejection clashed. Bursting with ideas, he hesitated. Would the council embrace his vision, or dismiss it as mere self-indulgence? Driving home, he mulled over how to present his ideas. This was no longer solely about him, it was about giving voice to those who could not advocate for themselves. He understood that this was bigger than an exhibition, he was unearthing a cultural conversation that demanded attention and respect. Yet in pushing for this transformation, he realized he would need allies, people who understood what he was striving for, people who would allow him to tap into undiscovered depths of both artistic expression and collective consciousness. As he entered his apartment, the silence felt oppressive. He suddenly sensed the weight of his decisions pressing down on him. The transformation he envisioned required more than mere action, it demanded unyielded passion and astuteness in navigating the layers of human understanding. Suddenly, Mike's phone buzzed, breaking the silence. He glanced down, recognizing a number he hadn't expected to see, a mentor from his past, someone he could trust to guide him through this turning point. With bated breath, he answered, feeling the tension. Both from this connection and the potential for something transformative. Would his mentor's guidance steer him toward success, or open doors he wasn't yet ready to step through? As Mike answered the call, anticipation twisted in his stomach. The voice on the other end was familiar, a comforting presence that called forth memories of late-night brainstorming sessions and tough love critiques. "Mike, it's good to hear from you. What is going on?" "Actually, I'm in a bit of a situation," Mike began, laying bare the raw nerves beneath his resolve. He explained the council's skepticism, his vision for an exhibition that honored unseen sacrifices, and the hesitation knotting in his chest. It felt cathartic to share his struggle, each word cutting away at the chaotic thoughts that threatened to drown him. "I always knew you had something important to say," the mentor replied. "But remember, vulnerability can be your strength. When you draw from your experience, you create authenticity. Don't shy away from expressing that." The word sparked something in Mike, confidence, perhaps, or a renewed commitment to his mission. But what if they see it as indulgent? What if they don't understand? Then you have to make sure they do, his mentor urged. Step into the discomfort of it all. Your art should challenge perceptions, not coddle them. As the conversation unfolded, Mike absorbed the counsel like a sponge. He needed to convey complexity, to show the joys and sorrows interwoven in the stories he sought to tell. The more he engaged with his mentor, the clearer his vision became. It wasn't merely about military experiences, it encompassed the weight of memory and the essence of resilience shared by so many. They outlined a plan. Together, they would refine the narratives behind each piece, ensuring depth and connection. With renewed clarity, Mike recognized the urgency for allies not just in spirit but in action. He expressed the need for support from fellow artists and veterans who could lend their voices to this project, creating authenticity through shared experience. As the meeting concluded, Mike hung up, the resolve that swirled within him translating directly to action. Constructing a detailed list of potential collaborators, he jotted down names of veterans he knew, local artists eager to band together, and mentors who had supported him emotionally along the way. Each name represented not just companionship but a combined voice, a chorus that could bring forth a compelling, unified narrative to juxtapose the silent sacrifices around him. That evening, Mike sunk into his sketchpad, energized as visions transformed into sketches. Each line, each detail, pulsated with emotion. He found himself capturing the essence of those lives intertwined, the joy they'd known, the heart-wrenching narratives they carried. He could visualize exhibitions, each piece igniting discussion and contemplation, serving as a bridge to unspoken truths, yet as zeal ignited his creativity, a creeping doubt intruded again: what if he overshot? The thought spiraled through his mind, but he quelled it, realizing that even if he faltered, the attempt was necessary. Leaving echoes of silence behind was a risk worth taking. Several nights of collaboration with like-minded creators turned into an organic movement, breaking through the initial fears. Mike felt something shifting within, not just his art, but his entire perspective on vulnerability, purpose, and expression. Each connection strengthened his resolve, but as the deadline loomed closer, one unexpected conversation challenged everything he had built. An artist from his past, a potent reminder of personal discord, reached out unexpectedly. "Mike," she said, her voice deceptively mellow yet laced with unresolved tension, "I hear you're working on something big. I need to know, are you ready for the truth to come out?" Her question sent a shiver down his spine, forcing him to confront not just the project but the deeper implications of authenticity in his art, connections, and the shadows he had long avoided. The time had come to engage not just with his art, but to face the repercussions that lay beyond it. Would he confront the truths within or shy away again, leaving the conversation half-finished? Mike stared at the blank page of his sketchpad, the shadows of previous conversations swirling through his mind. The artist's question lingered like smoke from a dying flame: "Are you ready for the truth to come out?" It was a question that both terrified and electrified him, a challenge wrapped in uncertainty. He pressed the pencil against the paper, wanting to sketch out the emotions enveloping him but finding himself paralyzed instead. The truth felt like a jagged edge, one he knew he needed to confront. This wasn't merely about creating art, it was about the stories that had been buried deep within him, the truths he had been reluctant to expose. How could he hope to help others if he couldn't even face his own vulnerabilities? Each flicker of doubt ignited flashes of memories he'd buried. The fragile relationships, the miscommunications, the unresolved conflicts, they all bubbled to the surface. The artist he had once collaborated with had played a significant role in his artistic development, but their bond had fractured when he had chosen to explore themes that felt too raw, too personal. Now, her question forced him to reassess that break. Was he truly ready to revisit the pain and the potency of those experiences? As he wrestled with this internal conflict, he found himself reaching for his phone, flicking through contacts until he landed on her name. With a quick inhale, he pressed the call button. The sound of the ringing echoed in his ears, each tone amplifying his nerves. She answered. "Mike?" Her voice came through, warm but with a hint of caution. "Hey, it's me. I'm ready to talk." Her silence hung in the air, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved tension. The dialogue that followed was surprisingly candid, both of them navigating the complexities of their shared past. They discussed the art that had caused their rift, how perceptions had shifted, and the realizations they had both faced since. "You weren't being indulgent," she said, the sincerity in her voice forging a path forward. "You were being honest. That's something we both need to embrace." Each word propelled Mike forward, his internal resistance breaking down as he acknowledged the potential for healing, not just between them but within himself. The fear that had always held him back absorbed a slightly different shape, one he could confront rather than flee from. That night, Mike poured himself into his work with newfound intensity. He envisioned how to weave those truths into what he had been creating, employing his art and the stories of veterans. This was not about him alone. It was a narrative that could encapsulate the complexities of their experiences, a narrative that needed to be told. He would collaborate with those he had alienated and those he had yet to meet, unafraid to diminish the silence surrounding them. However, during this positive momentum, the nagging questions returned. Was he capable of truly expressing the pain and valor intertwined in these lives? Did he possess enough skill to invoke the emotional echo he aspired to achieve? He knew he needed to find answers to these questions swiftly as the deadline for revealing his work approached relentlessly, compelling him to step beyond mere sketches and into the fray of raw, authentic storytelling. Facing the past thrust Mike into an unexpected confrontation with himself. It made him evaluate not just his art but the definitions he had crafted around vulnerability and authenticity. This wasn't simply about the visuals, it was about truthfully representing sacrifices while penetrating the hearts of those who witnessed it. As he laid down his pencil, sweat dripped from his brow, yet the clarity of purpose filled the void of uncertainty within him. But even as ambitious as he was, something gnawed at him from the back of his mind, a bitter doubt like a voice whispering, "Are you really ready for this?" The moment would arrive soon, a culmination of every choice and connection he made, but would he find the strength to stand resolute when the time came, or would he falter once again? With the dawn of the next day came urgency. Mike awoke with determination, the faint glow of morning light laying itself across his sketchpad. The echoes from his conversation with the artist lingered, pushing him to dig deeper into the narratives he wished to unravel. He didn't just want to tell stories, he aimed to craft an experience that would resonate, one that sparked understanding and, perhaps, healing. That he picked up his phone, the artist's voice still fresh in his ears, and scrolled through his contacts. This time, instead of reaching out to her, he sought out connections to the veterans he wanted to portray, the very people whose stories had captivated him in fleeting moments. After a few hesitant tries, he secured a meeting with one veteran he had long admired for his bravery. Arranging to meet in a local diner, Mike could feel the caloric weight of his own expectations. How could he truly convey the vastness of a military experience he had only skimmed through in books? The weight of that responsibility twisted in his stomach, but he resolved to approach the conversation with integrity and openness. After all, if this was to truly reflect their truth, he needed to listen more than he spoke. Sitting across from the veteran, he asked open-ended questions, guided by curiosity rather than presumption. The man spoke of deployment, the stark contrasts between battlefield camaraderie and the solitude experienced upon returning home. Each word flowed like a ribbon untangling, their conversation hitched between the laughter of shared humor and the sorrowful pang of recollection. Mike found himself jotting down notes furiously, absorbing the raw truth spiraling from the veteran's lips. "War changes you," the veteran said, his gaze steady but laced with miles of experience. "It colors your world in a way no one can understand unless they've been there." As those words settled over him, Mike's apprehension simmered into a palpable sense of inspiration. He realized that, to channel this experience authentically, he would have to embrace the darkness alongside the light, the complexity of humanity that encapsulated both bravery and fragility. Over the following weeks, Mike immersed himself in this project. His once still sketchpad came alive, each page morphing into a tapestry of intertwining narratives. He stayed late at the diner, learning from veterans and collecting their stories while sharing laughter over coffee. Their anecdotes transformed him, reshaping his understanding of sacrifice. The beat of their bravery resonated through his art, a fierce urgency propelling him forward. Yet, amidst this growth, doubt festered. A relentless shadow loomed over him, reminding him of his past failures, whispering that he wasn't skilled enough, that he wouldn't do their experiences justice. This anxiety began manifesting physically. He'd catch himself staring blankly at his pieces, unsure of whether they did homage to the souls behind them. After yet another frustrating day, Mike stood in front of the mirror, the deep creases of concern etched on his forehead. His reflection didn't just show an unsteady artist, it revealed a man grappling with the weight of authenticity. Would he ever be ready enough? Determined not to let fear stifle his resolve, he forced himself back to the sketchpad. The vivid imagery began flowing out, scenes where vulnerability met valor, capturing the essence of the stories around him. But soon, he stumbled upon a concept, a powerful tattoo that one veteran bore, a memento representing loss, survival, and courage. Suddenly, a thought struck him. What if he showcased this tattoo, amplifying the emotions tied to it? It could encapsulate what many veterans wanted to express yet often couldn't find words for. His ideas crystallized. This could lead them to a cathartic exploration of their identities. As he reached for the pencil, an electrifying thrill shot through him. But that spark quickly dimmed under the weight of new concern. How would his subject react to this artistic interpretation of something so intimate? The deadline lingered, an unyielding specter, while the tension around this decision mounted. The moment of truth was looming closer than ever. He would have to confront his own fears and vulnerabilities again, not just as an artist but as a storyteller tasked with representing a tapestry of experiences far beyond his own. This was not simply about revelation, it was a crucial turning point. Would he risk sharing this portrayal, battling his inner accusations once more? Would it resonate, or would he misinterpret the very essence he sought to illuminate? With his heart racing and ink flowing on the page, he asked himself, was he ready to embrace the truth, not just for himself, but for those who entrusted him with their voices? The answer was still too distant to grasp, yet it felt uncomfortably close, hovering just beyond reach. Mike leaned closer to the sketchpad, focusing on the intricate details of the tattoo. The swirling lines formed a narrative that was as complex as the lives etched into the skin of the veteran. What began as a mere idea bloomed into an explosion of creativity. Each stroke was a whisper echoing the stories shared with him, the laughter, the tears, the weight of their sacrifices. However, as he created, he wrestled with a nagging apprehension. What if his interpretation fell flat? What if he misrepresented their truth? With every line he drew, he confronted his deepest fears, the fear of judgment, of failure, of not living up to the experiences of those he aimed to honor. The tattoo was symbolic, it encapsulated power and pain, and Mike grappled with whether he possessed the artistry to convey such profound emotions. After nearly a week of working tirelessly, Mike felt an overwhelming urge to share his progress with the veteran. In that moment of vulnerability, he felt exposed. His hands shook slightly as he typed a message on his phone, inviting the man to meet. The incongruity of seeking approval, a validation that felt crucial yet terrifying, plagued him. What would the veteran think of his interpretation? The thought nagged relentlessly, casting a shadow over his work. As he awaited a response, Mike revisited the publications with stories of veterans, combing through interviews that showcased their experiences. They spoke of their struggles to transition to civilian life, the haunting echoes of war that persisted. Immersed in these narratives, an idea began forming at the edges of his consciousness, a multidimensional approach to storytelling that blended visual art with shared experience. When the day finally arrived for their meeting, Mike walked to the diner with a mixture of excitement and dread. His sketchbook felt heavier than usual, as if it carried the weight of his fears alongside the art. Mind running in circles, he wondered if he would be prepared for whatever reaction lay ahead. The bell above the door jingled as he entered, momentarily breaking the tension. He spotted the veterans sitting at their usual booth, his expression unreadable. After exchanging pleasantries, Mike slid the sketchbook across the table, heart pounding in rhythm with the ticking clock. "This is what I've been working on," he said, his voice tinged with uncertainty. The veteran flipped through the pages. Mike's eyes remained glued to his face, seeking any recognition of emotion. Hours felt like minutes. Would he nod, smile, or would there be disappointment? Finally, the veteran paused at the tattoo sketch, tracing the lines with his finger. "You captured the essence," he said, his voice low. "It's not just ink. It symbolizes loss, resilience, everything we carry with us." Relief flooded Mike's senses, but another wave of doubt cascaded in. The veteran leaned back and continued, eyes shimmering with intensity. But remember, this isn't just my story. It belongs to many. It's important to show the struggles we face after a life like this. A chill ran down Mike's spine. There it was again, the prompt to dig deeper, to expand beyond the surface. As he absorbed the veteran's words, something shifted within him. The potential of his project transformed into a calling, a sacred responsibility. He wasn't merely creating, he was bridging understanding between two worlds, creating space for others to share their narratives. Leaving the diner, the crisp air felt electric, rejuvenating. But as exhilaration spurred him on, doubts crept back in. How could he effectively capture the aftermath of war, the psychological scars that lingered long after the fighting had ceased? His resolve sharpened as he settled in at his workspace. The tattoo was no longer just an image, it became a starting point, an invitation for others to share their experiences, the good, the bad, the unresolved. He envisioned a series of interviews that accompanied his sketches, intertwining personal reflections with their visual representations. By showcasing not just the tattoo's significance but the story surrounding it, he could create a platform for the voices silenced by trauma and shame. But with each new idea, anxiety twisted like a vice inside him. Would they trust him enough to dive deep, to reveal their raw truths? Determined yet apprehensive, Mike sat at the edge of his seat, poised to embark on a new chapter of exploration. Engaging with these veterans meant slicing through layers of silence and resistance, a task he was beginning to realize was monumental. As night fell, he picked up his phone, fingers hovering over the screen. Would this be a leap of faith, one that could change the trajectory of their shared narratives? The moment of decision hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Would he initiate that next conversation, one that might illuminate the truths gathering dust beneath their scars? The answer loomed like a distant thunderstorm, laden with both dread and anticipation. As he sat alone in his dimly lit studio, Mike felt an electrifying mix of dread and exhilaration. The thought of reaching out to veterans, of diving into the backstories embodied in their scars, ignited a fire inside him. Yet, a suffocating cloud of anxiety loomed overhead. What if they turned away from him? What if they felt his probing was intrusive, just another civilian seeking to exploit their pain for mere artistic expression? Clenching his jaw, Mike tapped out an initial message to a veteran who had been vocal about his struggles. He hesitated, the screen staring back at him as if it held the key to his ambition and his fears. "I'd love to hear your story," he typed, teetering on the edge of vulnerability, before sending it off with an almost desperate impulse. Time felt elastic as he waited for a response, his mind racing through possible scenarios. Each second stretched and warped, every vibration from his phone made his heart skip. Would he receive open arms or a slammed door? His fingers drummed a familiar rhythm on the table, a tune echoing the nagging doubt that had shadowed him throughout his career. Was he truly equipped for this endeavor? When the message finally pinged back, Mike's breath hitched. "Let us meet." The simplicity of that reply felt monumental. He would have a chance to connect, to perhaps understand the deeper narratives behind the inked skin. With newfound determination, he prepared for their meeting. Mike's mind transformed into a flurry of planning, strategizing about how he should approach the conversation. This wasn't just an interview, it was a trust-building exercise, a tender unveiling of layered truth. On the scheduled day, he found himself in a small industrial cafe that emitted warmth and echoes of conversation. The scent of roasted coffee beans filled the air, grounding him amid swirling thoughts. As he set up his notepad, he could feel the tension tighten his shoulders. His heart raced when the veteran appeared, tall, with an aura of quiet strength that drew Mike in. They exchanged nods and soon settled into conversation. Mike asked about the veteran's tattoo, focusing on the memories it entailed. To his relief, the man opened up, sharing stories of camaraderie, loss, and the relentless battle against his own mental scars. Each word reverberated with weight, as though Mike were etching them in stone. "This ink is a part of me," the veteran explained, gesturing to his tattoo. "Not all of it is pretty, but it's real, and there's power in that." Mike felt a lump form in his throat. He was entrusted with a sacred truth. He listened with intensity, making note of phrases that could guide his own art. The stories formed a knot in his stomach, each revelation illuminated the painful yet beautiful essence of their struggles. As the hours slipped by, Mike realized the endeavor transcended mere artistry. It was about honor and memorializing experiences that straddled both pride and pain. The tattoo would serve as a gateway into lives that deserved recognition. It was becoming clear that the more he solicited their voices, the more empowered they felt to share. When they concluded, Mike's heart raced with a sense of urgency. With each session, the nuances of their stories nestled into his awareness, reshaping his artistic vision. Driving home, he felt buoyant with energy, visions of sketches flooding his mind. He wanted to distill the weight of each story, to develop a narrative that bridged their experiences with beauty, revealing vulnerability without shying from harsh realities, but the eagerness faded as doubt wormed back into his mind. Did he truly have the capacity to honor their tales appropriately? Questions spiraled until he could make no distinction between artistry and authenticity. Each face he had encountered was laden with history and pain, scribbled not just on their skin but woven into their very souls. With a resolve stirred by the promise of purpose, Mike sat down to draft another message. This time, it was more than just a request, it was an invitation, a challenge for veterans to share even the darkest corners of their experiences. But now, he had a looming fear that perhaps they wouldn't respond as openly. Perhaps the shadows they carried were too heavy even for him to hold. As he clicked send, the uncertainty hung, thick and palpable, the enormity of what he was undertaking sitting heavily upon him. Would this journey carve new paths for those who needed their pain affirmed, or expose him as an impostor in the face of true suffering? Now, every line he would draw would demand not only his skill but his soul. Just how much of himself would this project require? Mike could feel the tension tightening once more, ready to meet the revelations to come. The days that followed were characterized by a flurry of anticipation and dread. Each morning, Mike would sink into his routine, but his thoughts lingered on the unanswered question: would anyone reply? Every ping from his phone set off a rush of adrenaline, only for the disappointment of silence to crash over him like a wave. He focused on sketching, but his pencil felt heavier, the lines less resolute. After 3 days, when doubt threatened to consume his resolve, a notification lit up his screen. "I'm in," it read. A veteran he hadn't initially contacted was willing to share his story, but with it came a weighty import he couldn't ignore. This was not just another narrative, it was a chance to delve deeper, to explore territory that challenged both him and his craft. A surge of excitement mixed with fear coursed through him. What experiences had this new veteran harbored? Thinking through possible questions, Mike quickly realized he was grappling with more profound layers of vulnerability. What if I can't honor his story? Morphed into a simmering anxiety, self-doubt curling at the edges of his newfound determination. As he prepared to meet, Mike sensed a shift in himself. This was not just about showcasing someone's pain through art, it was about offering a platform for healing. He imagined their stories illustrated in a way that would invite empathy and understanding from others, unveiling shared humanity in the depths of suffering. The meeting took place in a park under the sprawling branches of an oak tree that provided shade and tranquility. It was a stark contrast to the impending vulnerability they would both expose. The veteran arrived, his demeanor calm yet guarded. Their introductions were brief but filled with unspoken recognition. Between two people stepping into an emotionally charged arena, Mike started gently, sharing his aspirations for the project and the importance of revealing authentic truths. As he asked about the veteran's tattoo, he noticed the man's gaze soften, a flicker of warmth breaking through the guarded shell. What unfolded next was raw and captivating. The veteran spoke of combat, the moment severed between life and death, and the darkness that came with returning to a society perceived as indifferent. Every revelation pulled Mike deeper into the veteran's world. He found himself holding his breath, captivated by tales of loss intertwined with resilience. Each story opened up a deeper understanding of humanity, revealing the courage embedded within scars. Yet, as the meeting progressed, Mike wrestled with a personal dilemma. Could he really capture the essence of these tales without commodifying them? The tension hung thick in the air. The faces of the veterans were not just canvases for his art, they were testaments of bravery and survival. The realization dawned on him that to portray these stories responsibly would require profound respect and sensitivity, a line he tread carefully. As they concluded their time together, Mike felt an unexpected surge of purpose. It was no longer simply an artistic venture, this was a mission, a call to action cloaked in artistry. With every word shared, a deeper sense of commitment surged within him. Driving home, he mentally sorted through notes, his heart pounding with both excitement and apprehension. What was next? Could he leverage this story to bridge gaps of understanding? He realized that facing his insecurities was just as critical as capturing their stories. The project was not simply about them, it was about him too, his evolution, his engagement with vulnerability. Back in his studio, brainstorming ideas, a sudden thought struck him. What if he included the veterans' own sketches alongside each narrative? A crossroad of personal expression, art reflecting their voices alongside his, grounded in authenticity and true collaboration. This realization ignited a spark within him. Yet, alongside the exhilaration came an undeniable fear. Could he facilitate a setting where veterans felt comfortable sharing their sketches? Would they trust him enough to collaborate in this way? The prospect loomed before him, a vast ocean of potential mixed with uncertainty. The clock ticked on the wall, each sound reverberating through the silence. Standing before the canvases, surrounded by the ghosts of their stories yet to be told, Mike knew he was on the brink of something profound. Would the act of inviting them into his creative process change the essence of his work? Tomorrow, he would reach out again, but now it held a new weight, the intertwining of souls through shared creativity. As he contemplated the call he was about to make, one stark question loomed larger: would they answer? The day of unveiling had arrived, and Mike stood nervously behind the curtain at the local gallery, heart racing as he prepared to present the culmination of his journey and exploration, not only of his own struggles but an intricate tapestry of the lives of veterans who had entrusted him with their stories. What had started as a single tattoo stoked by past memories had transformed into an exhibition of interconnected narratives, each one a testament to resilience, pain, and the bond of unyielding brotherhood. The audience filled the room: locals, veterans, and even those skeptics who had once doubted him. As he took a deep breath, Mike reminded himself of the powerful authenticity woven into every piece of art displayed. This was not merely about visual appeal or artistic merit. He had harnessed the very essence of their experiences, combining sketch and story to honor the sacrifices made by those who served. With a mix of apprehension and determination, he stepped forward, the spotlight illuminating the faces of the figures he had drawn. Thank you all for coming. Today, we explore narratives often left unsaid. Each piece before you is a window into the lives of our veterans, each brushstroke reflecting their triumphs, their pains, and ultimately, their resilience. His voice resonated with confident gravitas, the quiet echo of his nervousness faded in the warmth of the moment. As he unveiled the first piece, a haunting portrait of the veteran who had opened his heart to him, Mike felt the weight of eyes acknowledging the humanity in the depiction rather than the mere artistry. He recounted the story behind the ink, the despair and laughter that encoded the lines of their lives, and the room hung onto his every word. He spoke of the shared vulnerability, the conversations late into nights filled with raw honesty, where breaking down barriers had birthed an understanding he had strived to capture. There were shifting expressions of recognition in the crowd, a genuine connection developing between the audience and the pieces. The journey of creation was no longer just his own, it belonged to each veteran who shared their scars, enabling Mike to truly understand that vulnerability was not a weakness but a bridge to deeper understanding and empathy. He presented the next pieces, tracing the contours of each narrative, the strength, struggles, and the indelible marks left behind by war. When he finally showcased the intricate tattoo that had become emblematic of their story, he felt a rush of emotion. Here lay the essence of camaraderie, of battles fought not just on foreign soil but in the quiet aftermath of homecoming, a clarity that transcended fleeting moments and solidified bonds. As he concluded, Mike could see the visible impact of his words, a shift in perception, an engagement with awareness. Applause erupted, blending with sounds of hushed conversations filled with admiration for what had been achieved. He had effectively wrestled with his own limitations, embraced criticism, and transformed doubt into acceptance. He wasn't merely an artist showcasing his portfolio, he had become an advocate for the narratives that deserved recognizing. Later, amidst the afterglow of accomplishments, several veterans approached him, eyes shining. "You did us justice, Mike," said one softly. "You took our pain and painted it in solidarity." Their gratitude anchored him. This was the moment he had yearned for, recognition not just of his effort but his capacity to connect their stories to wider consciousness. Stepping back, Mike realized how far he had come. Untangling the scars of his own experience, he discovered strength not in hiding but in vulnerability, learning that the bravest act was to openly share. Each heartbeat resonated with renewed purpose as he acknowledged his growth. He had evolved from a man cloaked in doubt into one confident enough to define and assert his place within this collective narrative. As the evening wound down and attendees filtered out, Mike stood alone for a moment, absorbing the sincerity that lingered in the air. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of belonging and understanding and acceptance of who he had become. The tattoo on his forearm throbbed softly as if it too had been replenished by the resonance of shared stories around him, and in that quiet reflection, he knew that this was just the beginning. The path ahead, still uncharted and filled with choices, offered hope to raise voices that remained hushed in the shadows for far too long. He had accomplished something significant not just for himself or the veterans he honored but as a pathway to communal healing through art. With newfound determination, Mike stepped into the next chapter of his life, eager to share these experiences further, fostering connections that held the potential to ignite conversations needed in society. The future shimmered with possibilities. He had transformed his scars into bridges for others. His journey had matured into a powerful testament to resilience, marking the initiation of a renewed chapter for both himself and the communities he now endeavored to enlighten. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Join the movement of stories. Let's celebrate resilience together.